Köşküm var deryaya karşı, durmaz akar gözümün yaşı. Ah, of aman. That's an amazing old Turkish songs. The lyrics translate roughly into: my mansion faces the sea, yet my tears flow relentlessly. Something like that. Köşküm var deryaya karşı, durmaz akar gözümün yaşı. But fear not, nobody's tears are gonna flow today, because we are back with the long answers to the special questions I received over patreon.com. Basically, if you've just started watching this channel and if you're wondering what the fuck is going on, it's simple. This is an eccentric channel dedicated to evolution, weird things, weird animals, weird everything really. And I'm happy to have you all here. Now, there's a way to ask me special questions that later get answered in bespoke videos like this. And for that, you only need to follow the links below. Go to Patreon, donate any amount you wish, and you will be eligible to ask questions for me to answer. And as always, please consider supporting me on Patreon just for the heck of it. Or if you're already supporting me on Patreon, consider donating to me on Buy Me a Coffee to also access a gallery of special surreal paintings. Or also maybe go to the CM Kozman merch store and get all sorts of nice t-shirts, mugs, stuff like that, you know. These will make you happy and they will help contribute to this channel. Heck, I mean, thanks to your contributions, we have access to an editing suite of fantastic software shenanigans now. I mean, just listen to this, all right? I'm just gonna clap and music is gonna start. Clap! Wow, how amazing is this sound, huh? Some nice background sound, some nice cool background music to get you in the groove, get the juices flowing. Alright everyone, welcome to the Q&A session, and now we are just continuing with the last batch of questions. Just straight up answers, boom, boom, boom. Welcome again. Another question from a long-time contributor Amanda B. Do you or would you like to make sculptures? If so, which materials intrigue you? And what do you also think about 3D modeling? Of course, this in the light of me being a somewhat well-known artist of strange creatures and fantastic paintings. Okay, so sculpture is a whole other domain of activity in which I don't treat lightly. I have sculpted funny things out of clay in the past, and sometimes I take strange pieces of wood and stuff from basically the weird places I explore, and I glue them together and then cover them with varnish and stuff and make these like improvised sculptures. But I would never call myself a true sculptor. You know, people who work with stone, who devote their lives to figuring out volume and harmony in volumes. Granted, I have a sense of aesthetics and proportion, which I see not many people share, which I value, but it would still take like a bit more to get me to call myself a sculptor, if you know what I mean. So I'm just dabbling, but whatever I create, I enjoy. I want to make fun little things, but don't expect a sculpture exhibit from Daddy Kozman anytime soon. As for 3D sculpting, it's one area I wish I had gotten into earlier, but as things stand now, I just have such little time. Everything I do is like kind of split between this YouTube channel, my day job, my real OG paintings, my big projects. So not too much time, I'm afraid. But I really stand in awe and in great respect of artists who do these great 3D sculpts. And sometimes, you know, fans and friends do 3D sculpt homages to my work too, and it only makes me happy. In fact, if you look at the background images of this video, you will see a strange low polygon 3D sculpture by my dear friend Echidna, and it's just one of my favorite things out there. I really like stuff like that. So yeah, I wish I could do more, but maybe I will, I don't know. It also doesn't help that I always use old computers and old software, and like I got a bit of a learning curve, let me just say. And these new 3D sculpting stuff, I don't know, if you have any recommendations for easy to do 3D low polygon sculpture solutions, let me know in the comments and maybe I will pick it up. Alright, Amanda's curious questions persist. If you could create an ecosystem which could terraform a planet in the solar system, which planet would you choose? Would you make it easy for yourself and pick a close planet like Mars? Or would you take the challenge and pick a planet like Neptune, which seems uninhabitable to Earth's population? Does Neptune even have a solid surface? I don't know. I mean, you could, if you have this unlimited magic technology, maybe surround Neptune with an Earth-like atmosphere, but then still the gravity could be difficult to live under. I think if I had to choose, I would choose Venus, which is actually closer to the habitable zone than Mars. But Mars also has these amazing mountains, Olympus Mons. It also has this like amazing canyon, and those areas just beg to be, dumped with water and terraformed. Of course, another caveat, I think this is highly impossible. In fact, in their analysis of terraforming projects, NASA themselves admit that currently no technology we know can make Mars inhabitable, or any other planet for that matter. So I think I would give the easy answers, Mars or Venus. But if forced to choose something really extraneously, like really something really far out, I would choose one of the moons of Jupiter or Saturn, maybe Titan, which is nearly as big as Mars, if I'm not mistaken. So some distant outpost like that. That would be cool. It would be strange if some gigantic world like Neptune was inhabitable to people, because it would have 100, 200 times the surface area of Earth, and you could have nations, continents, and amazing biospheres there. It could imagine a kind of world with 100 times the diversity of large herbivores, or 50 different indigenous races of people, human beings. Those areas also are like really cool and interesting to speculate and daydream about. I am really always like curious about these hypothetical scenarios where there's a lot more surface area to be inhabited, and then human beings and earthly creatures have diversified in them. Maybe there are future multiple ethnicities or races or even species of human beings. Those scenarios always sound really interesting to me. Alright. If a time traveler told you that humans would be extinct in 50 years, how do you think it would happen? Obviously, war seems like an easy answer, but maybe you have more interesting ideas. I actually think that even if we have the worst nuclear war, some human beings would survive. Make no mistake, I mean, millions would perish. Billions would perish. But even then, people are quite resilient. Like in some place like Central Asia or some Pacific islands, like people would survive. I mean, it's very hard to like destroy every human being with radiation. I mean, the only way this could happen is if they detonated every nuke at the same time in the same place and created a sort of volcanic super eruption kind of scenario. But I don't know, if in 50 years is also a very short time. So it would have to be something extremely catastrophic, and my money for that would be on like a comet impact, which nobody could foresee and nobody could stop. I think that's just gonna be it, a big dinosaur killer sized comet. That would make people extinct in 50 years or less. But I think people are gonna persist. I mean, this is one of my pet peeves. Everybody's worried about civilization collapse, but in their hearts they're all scared of there being less white men in power. Like, they're mostly scared of white male guys having some of the power as opposed to all of the power. And the Roman collapse, these weird people are continuously, and it's almost like castration anxiety for them, afraid of. I don't think it's gonna happen. I think people are very, very, very resilient. People's populations, human populations, are going to level off, it seems. But it's not gonna be like white extinction or human extinction. It's just gonna be a very interesting and weird and maybe turbulent time, but I think it's gonna end up more peaceful than these people fear. There will be 4 billion people as opposed to 8 billion people. And it's always schizophrenic. I mean, these right-wingers, they're scared of population reduction, but they're also scared of immigrants. Like, one is there to solve the other thing, you know? And I don't think white people are gonna get replaced either. I mean, there will still be a lot of white people around. There's just gonna be a lot more non-white people around. And that's not even gonna be a statistical increase. These people have always been there in the background, you know, behind the scenes. You just get to see them more in Western cities these days and urban environments. And it's a very complicated issue, but I don't think it's the end-all be-all. And I also, in the long run, see the current Western civilization not collapsing, but kind of slowly getting eclipsed. But something new will take its place. That's how history has always run. There have been waves and like heights of history, and at certain points, different civilizations seem to have carried like the banner of humanity forward, usually engaging in lots of exploitation too by the side. So something else will replace it. I don't know who, what. I mean, but also there are still no like obvious civilizational alternatives to the Western civilization, even as it exists now. I mean, the current corrupt version of untrammeled, rampant capitalism and perverse state power, that's on its way out, I hope. But even then, I think the response will come from within the West in a sort of syncretic thing nobody has ever seen before. All I'm saying is, you know, the planet is not gonna adopt Chinese or Russian civilizational mores all of a sudden, because they have nothing to offer to replace the spirit of free inquiry, the spirit of, even as fictional as it has become, the spirit of democracy and scientific openness that the West embodies. You know, don't count so hard on the West collapsing anytime soon. It will change though. Anyways, Amanda's questions persist. What are one of your favorite cryptid creatures for each continent? Man, this question caught me unawares. Let me rack my mind. In South America, I like this thing called the Magna Puyari, or I'm probably mispronouncing it, but it's basically this one-eyed giant sloth-like creature. Or wait, if you really want to get silly, in South America it has to be the chonchon creature, which is spelled Chonchon, and it's just a disembodied head flapping about with ears that are like wings. That guy's cool. In North America, it has to be one of the lake monsters, but a specific lake monster. I forget the name of the lake monster once again, but it's meant to be a snapping turtle the size of a car, basically. That thing is cool as heck. I like that a lot. In Asia, it has to be the Mongolian deathworm, which is a kind of legless, electrocuting reptile kind of creature that nobody has ever seen, but it shocks people. In Africa, I know there are lots of African cryptids. A lot of them are like kind of secondary fellow travelers with the whole colonization and exploitation narrative. So you gotta be kind of careful about that. I mean, nothing bad with the myths themselves. It's just the time and the millénaire they were spun off in were really dark times. That's all I'm saying. I don't know, maybe that one creature called the Row, the ROW, which is like a horned dinosaur type of creature, reported from Africa. Africa is a big place. So we covered those. In Europe, it has to be the Tatzelwurm, which is like a cat-like reptile thing from the Swiss Alps. The coolest thing about this creature is that it comes from someplace smack dab in the middle of Europe, you know. But Switzerland is a wild place too, never forget. In Europe, it has to be the Tatzelwurm. We talked about Asia. We talked about, and in Australia, it has to be there are some like cryptid reports of the giant monitor lizard Megalania surviving. So I think it would have to be that, like persistent Megalania. Yeah. All right. Another question by Amanda. If you could learn 3 additional languages just like that, like Hans Landa in that movie Inglourious Bastards, which would you pick? Okay, I have to just pick 3. God damn. French and German both sound really cool to me. I would like to at least one of them, you know. French or German. French is also like mighty poetic and like it's got even like a... All I'm saying is like I know some expressions in French and they would suit my sibilant, cornered, weird, polygonal accent so sexily, you know. I would speak it like a motherfucker. So one of them, let's say it's French. Another one has to be Greek because I already know a little Greek, so I would like to be fully competent in it. Then it gets weirder. Maybe something from the Near East, like Arabic or Persian, but Arabic also has like each Arabic country almost has a separate language. The dialects are so unintelligible. But I would like to be able to speak classical Arabic. So I don't know much about its finer details, but apparently during the time of the Crusades, there was a sort of high Arabic spoken, which was a very haughty and like exotic and cool language. I'd like to speak that like immaculately. Yeah, so French, Greek, and classical Arabic. Those are my three answers. Alright, another question, friend. Vincent Girganti asks, non-humanoid tools question. Hi CM, hope you're doing well. I want to ask you about some brief advice. I am currently working on a project where a group of monotremes, these are creatures like the platypus or the echidnas, evolving intelligence and building a society. We live in a society, alright. How would they develop tools? Because these have no hands, but they have a lobed tongue. So like only one hand. So maybe for this first part of the question, look at elephant trunks, because that's like a technical analog of these things. If these things are using their tongues, they would still be able to hold stuff with their mouths. So just move from there. Maybe a lot of more fine like sculpting by banging things against each other. Like they would grab the piece of rock with their tongue or trunk, smash it but very delicately, rotate it and like scrape it around things and like sculpt it by scraping around things. So that could be a starting point. Like instead of using two manipulators to make a thing, you could have one manipulator and scrape it against a hard surface and sculpt it that way by abrasion. So there's my answer. Then Vincent Garganti refers to the Dinosauroids project that me and Simon Roy built together in the early 2000s, detailing a world of intelligent dinosaurs, and we just had some nice concepts for their items and tools, and the credit there goes to Simon Roy. He drew almost all of these things. I remember we briefly talked about how they would have cups or drinking bottles, because a bird like dinosaur does not have cheeks, so it would have to have like something like a long cone with a stopper, so it would put the beak inside that and go lip 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 lip. So there. And we have lots of tools explained in that Dinosauroids project, but you would be surprised at how much of the shit we just made up. We just took stuff from human archaeology and like basically gave it to the hands of the Dinosauroids, and that was that. I remember at one point we did not even figure out how Maniraptoran hands worked, but we just made the drawings, and by making the drawings it kind of became obvious to us and we just went ahead with that. So yeah, another question from Vincent Girganti. How do you consider the anatomy and biology of an intelligent creature when devising what they can craft and use? I actually so there's a kind of founder effect in these scenarios. If your world has one intelligent species and it's this dorky fat echidna people with one trunk or like a tongue, they could be really clumsy, but they're still like the only creatures that could manipulate their environment, so they would still be prosperous, they would thrive. I look at two things. So I look at what the animal can do, and just like the abrasion concept with the tool gripped in the tongue and rubbed against the surface to sculpt it, I just mentioned. And then I look at the main things animals do to their environment. So one of them is digging. Most animals, if they're tetrapods, they dig holes. So that's like a beginning of artifice. Like many animal species dig holes. So look at how they dig holes, look at how they manipulate their prey, and build outwards from there. I remember, so in Istanbul where I live, there's a kind of hillside near a suburban place where a lot of feral dogs hang out. And it's like a rolling hillside, but I noticed that these dogs always dig their little pits to sleep in on this hillside, so the hillside looks like pitted with dog holes. And it just, when I saw that, I was like, wow, that's a non-human artifact right there. Dog hole city, so nice. So you even looking at those simple things could be really helpful, you know. I hope these helped you out. Okay, let's finish this whole thing. Alright, Unclear Rain says, I have two questions. How did the asteromorphs evolve their arms in All Tomorrows? Okay, so basically in All Tomorrows, my future evolution story, there's a group of people who live in the vacuum of space. In millions of years, they kind of turn into almost spider-like creatures. And basically how this happens is that their arms get shorter but their fingers get longer, so the fingers become spider-like limbs on themselves, and that's how they evolve. And Unclear Rain refers to a sketch by Vanga Vagog, who is a very, very famous and one of my favorite artists, and he once made this depiction of an asteromorph hand evolution. And yes, that's pretty much the answer to your question. That's how it evolved. Vanga Vagog depiction is like 99% canon, yes. Would you also consider making merchandise? Asks Unclear Rain. Well, the merchandise is already there. Plushies, pins, keychains. I am currently limited to the merchandise that Creator Spring can make for me. So it's more like t-shirts, cups and stuff, but those have been selling out not too badly. So yeah, there's my merchandise idea. Merch store, go to it everybody. Alright, Jacob Maguire asks, have you thought about doing something like traditional Turkish marbling, also known as Ebru, in the background of one of your surreal paintings? It's very eye-catching, you know. Okay, so there is this time-hallowed traditional art called Ebru, which is really magical. They basically have this rectangular vat of oil. On top of it, they suspend these paints and they dip a paper in it, and it just comes out like, oof, perfect swirling patterns. Now, this is a very old and very deeply traditional art. So I would not want to take something like this and just paint one of my surreal paintings over it, because it kind of feels disrespectful. It kind of feels like graffiti, you know? I would rather learn Ebru properly and then kind of create Ebrus with my own color palettes and my own pattern striations. I mean, this is a same with any kind of old art. Like it also in Europe, they also have a deep tradition of marbled paper and marbled painting too. Like these things I really respect. So if I ever got into them, I would want to get into them properly and not as like sideshows and attractions for. I wouldn't want to half-ass it, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I would just be a proper marbler or a proper calligrapher. Like these things take time, people devote their whole lives into it, and like I'm devoting my life into my surreal painting, so I should respect other forms of art if I expect to respect myself. Alright, to close off the Q&A session time, Kyrie Fiskrov, a long-time supporter of this channel, comes in and asks, I hope it's not too late to slide this one in. Have people ever thought you have autism or Asperger syndrome? Do you think you have it? I have had a question like this before, but let me answer it again. Basically, when I was like 15 or 16, I read a science fiction book from, what's the name? Just a second. Stephen Baxter, who's a more engineering-oriented author, and he has this like interesting series of books called it's like the same story told over and over again in different parallel universes. It's called Time, one is called Time, one is called Space, one is called Origin, and another one is called Phase Space. These are all like these stories about some weird interstellar disaster threatening the world, and some like Iron Man / Elon Musk type character named Raid Malenfant rises to the occasion, and like they have a lot of weird quote-unquote hard sci-fi adventures in space. I was like a big fan of these books when I was 15, but they were also like a kind of vaccination against ultra-individualistic engineer mindset bullshit in science fiction and depictions of the future. I still have a few favorite books by Stephen Baxter, but these ones are not it. Anyways, in these books, this guy, this main character, Raid Malenfant, is like so smart, and he breaks all the rules, and he finds a lot of companies, and all these companies, he uses them to go to space and save Earth and save humanity, and like, fuck like that. And in one of the side notes, I remember like Raid Malenfant is thinking about himself, and he was saying things like, he was introverted, he was smart, he had a good memory, and he didn't care about what anybody thought. I'm paraphrasing. These were characteristics of Asperger syndrome, and he knew he had it himself. You know, something to that length. And this was my introduction to, oh, I got Asperger's, as a kind of self-aggrandizing, almost like a star sign-like adoption of mental disorders. So I briefly went through that phase, but then I realized, what the fuck am I doing? I could see clearly, comparing myself to people around me, things, social factors like wealth, income. I mean, I had friends who were far wealthier, but also far dumber, you know. I could see I was smarter, I had a longer memory, I could remember things better. But then I realized, you know, I guess people are different, you know. Some people have longer dicks, some people have longer legs, some people have longer memories, okay. But I never thought about myself as like an Asperger syndrome haver, or like, I don't know, even if there was something like this, I never made it like even a corner of my personality. For the same reason, I don't say I'm a green-eyed person, you know. I am a green-eyed person, but I don't need to be the one who's saying that. Same with autism. I mean, my parents, bless their souls, they came from an extremely lucky subsection of Turkish population. They were extremely westernized, extremely secular people who did not have to work a day in their lives. My late grandfather did all the work, and they just enjoyed the spoils. So for them, being Western looking, Western acting, Western traveling, globally oriented, and social, social was like a must-have in life. And I remember as growing up, you know, I mean, bless their hearts, everything I wanted, they got me, and I didn't want much, I just wanted books and stuff, you know. And I remember them talking among each other, being concerned about how I'm only reading books, and how that's a bad thing, and how maybe I'm autistic almost. But I think it was just one of those weird parent ideas, boomer parent ideas they were having. I don't care. I mean, I remember they used to like egg me on to be more social or meet more people, but I wasn't anti-social either. I always had an outgoing and perceptive personality. I just chose not to use it in most cases, because I'd rather be drawing or working with my own stuff. Yeah, but for them, at least during one particular part of my childhood, it may have been a thing of related to autism, but I don't know. I mean, socially, I'm a high-functioning person. I like meeting people, I like being around people, but not all the time. I don't know. I don't think these questions are for me to answer, but that's my take on them. And this has been the end of the open question time as of the 10th of November 2023. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and if you want to ask more questions, a new open question time is open. Just click the links and ask me questions there. If you listened to me this far, please let me know in the comments. Say I listened to all the answers, Kozum and Daddy, so I know you listened that far, and we can beat the algorithm. And as always, have a nice day and goodbye.